My name is Rick Haskell. I am an economist at the University of Utah, and my family and I live in Sandy, so a little bedroom community not far from here. I've actually just recently finished my doctoral studies here at the University of Utah after having had a modestly successful career in financial services. My background in economics, it largely started just from a practical standpoint. I took an economics course in my undergraduate program at Brigham Young many years ago, and it was just a little taste of economics, but I found that that course was one of the 3 courses I used in my career more than any others. I used economics, I used a little bit of accounting, and I used business writing more than I used anything else for my entire undergraduate career. So it started kind of an interest for me, and over the years I read and I studied, and in the financial services industry where I spent most of my career, then economics was clearly relevant, financial economics especially, and I gained a real interest and love for economics such that I finally ended up strategizing the building of and then finally the sale of a series of businesses to put me in a position where I could come back and receive a higher education degree, a doctorate in economics, so that I could go on to then teach at the university level. In the decades between doing my undergraduate work and returning to academia as a 50-plus-year-old man, I had a career and raised a family and had some great experiences, and like most careers, some difficult experiences as well. I was modestly successful, which simply means I made 1 or 2 good decisions more than all the bad decisions, which careers are full of both. But I was very fortunate to be in the financial services industry, both locally and in San Francisco and New York, in periods when the financial services industry was doing very well. Idiots were making money on Wall Street, and I fit into that very nicely. And so it was a great experience for my wife and I. It gave us the opportunity then to acquire and build some businesses here in Utah. When we left the financial services industry in terms of the large firm New York structure, we left that, returned here to Utah where I had an investment in a company. I then sought to grow that investment so I could then turn that into a profitable transaction. We did. And then I returned to working in financial services with clients, with portfolios, assets, and really living out what we talk about in terms of economics today. I mean, the investment industry is nothing but applied microeconomics with an ear towards macro so that you're not always making mistakes. And at a point, I was able to then sell the businesses that we had developed in financial services to then give us the resources to come and have this experience. My undergraduate degree was in family financial planning and counseling. And my hope at the time was to be able to find a position as a stockbroker, because I understood stockbrokers made a lot of money. They clearly knew people that had a lot of money, and they had a very interesting, very status-oriented job. But what I realized after receiving one of those jobs with what is now one of the larger companies on Wall Street today, after receiving one of those jobs, going through my initial training, and then being placed at a very small desk and in a very small office, or really a cubicle, just outside of San Francisco, I realized that a young stockbroker was a cold caller. And since I had a wife, a child, and obligations, I was now a cold caller, hoping to become a stockbroker one day. And in about a 3-year period of time, I developed enough of a business that it gave me the success to be able to move on in that industry, which was tremendous for us. What I'd like for students to get out of this course is really something twofold. First of all, I'd like them to have an understanding that economics is nothing but the science of decision making, whether it's at the macro level or the large system level or the micro level, the household, the firm, the individual. So in this labor economics course, we're looking at decisions, and those decisions are largely a function of how many workers shall we hire and what shall they be paid. So for me, this course is really about one question, and it's just about answering one question for all the different modules we'll go through. And that question is, why do different workers receive different wages? I think not only is that something very interesting for us to answer as academics, but it's also very practical for us to answer as students in a course, because we're part of a labor market. And you're preparing as students to become a long-term part of that labor market. Wouldn't it be good for you to know why different workers receive different wages? And then maybe you'll have the tools to be able to earn the kind of resources you'd like to earn yourself. This is one of the few courses you'll take where you know it is absolutely applicable, and you will be a participant in what you are studying for the rest of your career and beyond. I began to teach at the University of Utah in large part because it was a part of the function of my economics doctoral program. I came at that supposing that I would do this kind of check off a box, and realized very quickly that I loved what we were doing. I was fortunate, my very first class I was able to teach was a labor economics course. It was this course, but in a live setting. I loved it. I loved being able to see the interaction that students understood as they came to realize not only that they could answer the question, but how to answer the question and why answering the question was important to them. So I loved that. I've gone on to teach rather a lot here. I teach at another local private university as well. And I've come to realize that this is one of the more exciting things I could be doing at this point in my life. One of the things that I'm really very proud of is that in this interaction I've had with students, I've been able to drive some fairly significant student relationships. I have former undergraduate students now, they're in graduate programs in different parts of the country, and I'm fortunate to be able to keep some contact with them. Not because I'm hounding them, but because they've maintained some contact with me because of the dialogue that we opened in this class or some of the other labor-oriented classes I teach at the University of Utah. So I'm very pleased with that, and at least a couple of them would tell you that they came into that course, that labor economics course, trying to either fill a quantitative intensive requirement for the university or trying to check off a box for an for the econ department's expectation, and came out of it with a much greater understanding, not just of labor economics, but everything they'd been taught to this point, because I draw all of that into this class. So if economics is something that's been studied by the student, this class is a great place for it to come together, because this is really labor, and the labor markets is where microeconomics and macroeconomics meld. I have students, one that is in an MBA program in California, a couple that are in law school in the East, one that's in a doctoral program in the Midwest that I've got some great contact with, and they would tell you, and I would hope it's true, I mean I kind of selfishly want to believe it's true, but they would tell me at least that they've gone to these greater academic heights because of the interest that really was lit for them in this class. I'm probably prouder of that in this experience than anything else. I'm very fortunate to have a wife with whom I've been married for 35 years, who is the absolute love of my life. I adore her, and I'm the very proud father of 4 adult children, each one of whom live in a different time zone. So it's a little inconvenient now. They weren't all born in different time zones, but they all live in different time zones. I have 3 very capable, very intelligent daughters, and a son who is just one of my very best buddies, similarly intelligent and capable. So I've been very fortunate to have that kind of a family. I think at the end of the day that I'm a pretty pragmatic guy. Sometimes I'm easy to get along with, and sometimes not as much so. My wife would tell you that if you want to get something across to me, then a 2x4 is probably your best delivery method. But honestly, one of the things that I've enjoyed in economics, certainly in our preparation here at the University of Utah, is that even though this is a department that has a lot of ideology, as do almost all economics departments, I'm somewhat void of that ideology. I don't care whether we're dealing with something very liberal or whether we're dealing with something very conservative. It doesn't matter to me. What I care about is whether or not it works. So I'm not bent to the left, I'm not bent to the right, I'm very pragmatic, which means I ask the question why of myself, of others, and certainly of students a lot. And a credible response, one that evidences some level of critical thinking and that's got some logic behind it, it goes a long way. And one that's a lot of touchy-feely kumbaya, sit around the campfire, not so much. I absolutely do not want any of my students to struggle or fail or be concerned about understanding the material because they haven't reached out to me. Because of that, students clearly have my email address. In fact, in most cases, students are able to just text me. Now, I almost never answer my cell phone unless you are my wife, and frankly, you don't look like my wife. So I probably am not going to answer it, but I always respond. I respond quickly, and I respond for as long as we need to respond. I love this interface. I was fortunate to have some extraordinary instructors at this institution. I had some very good instructors in my undergraduate degree. I want to be one of those. I want to be one that when you look back at this experience, you consider, I'm so glad I had access to that material at that time with that person because they led me through all of it. I understood all of it. I moved on being able to use it.